We already have, as Dawn mentioned, a model. What happened in 1968-69 is a good model for other states that want to have a constitutional convention. We came up with a system of electing delegates and ratifying proposed amendments that I think would be very effective in the 21st century as it was 40 years ago. And I think we should always keep in mind there's going to be disputes and emotional issues at any time in American politics and Illinois politics. When I was in college, that was a very, in the 60s and 70s, that was a time of great ferment in America and a lot of anger and emotion. Well, I don't see that as any different than today. The notion that today certain interest groups are going to be interested in electing delegates, so what? That's American history. And I think we should trust the voters' judgment on electing delegates and on ratifying amendments. Something that would violate fundamental rights, I don't think would ever be approved.
Could I just add one comment there? I don't understand why you trust the voters to elect statesmen as Constitutional Convention delegates, but you don't trust the same voters to elect their representatives who then do their work in the state legislature or in executive office. I mean, it's the same voters that are... You know, what we need to do is to get people, number one, to pay more attention, I think, to what their elected officials are doing, being a little more aggressive, perhaps, with them. And some of that, I think, also requires some, I'm sorry to say it, but some help from the media, because state government, except for, you know, a few little isolated, nasty issues, does not really get the kind of coverage it used to get when Charlie Wheeler, who's here somewhere, was covering Springfield. You know, thoughtful. I think you even had a little more, a few more lines in your stories, and that's a critical part of it also. But again, you know, the voters are the same voters. The whole point is they've got to be educated. They've got to be educated not only with respect to a constitutional convention, which they have not been with respect to this one. And that really bothers me a great deal, that there's been no preparatory work at all to help people understand. And we're going to be voting on this in a few months. We also have to have more education about the state issues for the legislators, too. I agree.
Well, I don't disagree with that, but I would say a constitutional convention is a one-time only event. And a lot of people who have never run for political office, they have another vocation in life, would say this is an opportunity for me to make a difference in a short constitutional convention, to make a difference for this generation, for democracy in Illinois. So I think you're going to get different candidates, as you did in 1969, people who were not professional politicians, such as at that time law professor Dawn Clark Netsch, and Mary Lee Leahy, who was a friend of ours, who was an environmentalist from the southeast side of Chicago, who wrote the environmental article of the Constitution. She wasn't a professional politician, and I think that that kind of person is going to be inspired to run. And I think also the fact that what happened before, and I hope it would happen again, is it was a nonpartisan election, much like we elect municipal officials. So there wasn't as much party labels. There was some of it. There's no question about it. I think you'll have better candidates, people who are not interested in a career. They're not interested in re-election. You don't get re-elected Constitutional Convention delegate. You have a chance to make history. And I think that is something inspiring, and particularly this time where people are interested in America, in democracy, in change, in reform. This is an ideal time to have a Constitutional Convention vote in Illinois.
Next question.
This is to Comptroller Netsch. You talked about divisiveness and partisanship currently going on in state government. You were elected on a nonpartisan basis to the Constitutional Convention, and you were also elected on a partisan basis to the Illinois Senate. And what I'm wondering is whether you noticed whether there was less divisiveness and partisanship when you were elected to the nonpartisan body in the Constitutional Convention as opposed to the state Senate.
The answer is yes, with a qualification, if I might. I think that the fact that we were elected as delegates to the convention formally on a nonpartisan base, although the partisanship of most of the delegates was well known, and the political parties played a role in a lot of the races. But nevertheless, we did not go there specifically as Republicans or Democrats. And there was no question in my mind, and I think this is one of Pat's strongest arguments, that made a difference. The coalitions that we could develop could cross party lines. No one felt bound in any way, and so it was very helpful, I think, at that time. The partisanship, when I first went into the legislature after that, it seems to me was not nearly as nasty, aggressive, locked in as it appears to me it is now. I think there's much more partisanship now than when I went into the legislature and served for a long period of time. And I think you're more likely to get that kind of atmosphere today. I don't know. When I think about this legislature and this governor and how they've managed to kind of mess things up over the last couple of years, I'm sorry that's the way I feel about it. I really shudder a little bit at giving them the power to set the ground rules for a constitutional convention. I'm just not at all sure that we would get. One of the things that's so different is in 1970, or leading up to 1970, there was very widespread agreement that there had to be a constitutional convention. We had something that was always called horse and buggy, antiquated, and both parties, all the business groups, the civic groups, practically everybody was on board, both before the convention, during the convention, and in the referendum that followed the convention. And so you had this very different atmosphere. Right now, I don't get that at all. I mean, I think there are some individuals, certainly Pat Quinn has been one, who have been very strongly supportive of having a constitutional convention. I hear it from some of the special interests, and I don't mean to use that word really quite, I mean, it sounds worse than I mean it, but it includes my friends and the merit selection group, by the way. And some, Pat Tobin is out there saying, we're going to get rid of we're going to get so many restrictions built in on revenue-raising power. We're going to get rid of home rule, or at least restrict it severely. I mean, some of those are already out there. And the abortion issue is going to be out there, too. But the difference there, Pat, is, and this is a very dramatic difference, those groups, many of them existed in 1970, but they were not as well funded. They were not as diehard as they are now. There was an entirely different atmosphere then than I think would exist right now, and that's part of what worries me a great deal. And it's not just on the so-called social issues; it's also on fiscal policy, for example. I mean, I'm always been for graduated income tax, but what I've said is, okay, we didn't pull it off then. There's so many things we could do now if you just get a governor and a legislature that are willing to do them.